So starting with credible data, again, I'm going to invite Rachel to talk about it. Maybe you can even...
I can. Yeah. So using the dashboard as the example, what we found was the hardest and most time-consuming portion of creating the dashboard was the data governance. So as a State Department, as many of you I'm sure have the same challenges, is we have statutory requirements around the data we collect, and those are the data rules for the data we have. We don't necessarily consider that data provides value in other ways, and so it's not collected, it's not tagged, it's not organized in a manner that could provide value in other ways to the public. And so we really had to start from scratch with the dashboard and create those business rules essentially around our data. And it sounds easy when you talk at a high level like that, but for some concrete examples, taking enrollment. We have 4 different reporting requirements for health plans to submit their enrollment to the department. So the first step was, okay, we have 4 reports, which one should be the source of truth? And we had different divisions in the department that didn't agree. So we had to bring those people together and understand what are you using the enrollment for and what makes the most sense for public consumption. And then we had to decide, okay, out of those 20 columns that you saw in our enrollment report, how do we categorize those? How do we create a commercial category? How do we create a government category? And that's not as simple as you would think, because we have weird reporting requirements where it's not just all of your Medi-Cal enrollment is reported in a Medi-Cal column. So that took the most work, and really ensuring that you have good data quality, that you understand what your data is saying, and so that you're not putting it out there and maybe misrepresenting through data visualization what your data is actually doing.
Great. Yeah, so basically from that data to have the quality data, clean data, to insight, that is where all the data analytics, business intelligence reporting, etc., this is where it comes. So what is the data telling us? We can analyze the data and come up with the insights that the data is telling us, or we may have a need that we want to make certain decision, and towards that decision, what data would help us make that decision. That could be another way of looking at it. So once you have the data, once you have that key insight you want to communicate, the communication is the next piece. So data storytelling, as I said, from data to insight, this is where it happens, but from insight to value, that's where the communication comes in play. So narration is where you do explain that data and tell a story. So how do you tell a story? Let's go back and see how stories in general are told, right? This is the famous Freytag's pyramid or story arc. For every story, there is some background information, there is some introduction, and then in the story, there is something happens, something that changes the world of our hero or hero of the story. And then there is rising action, there is climax, and finally there is falling action, and there is some resolution, right? And as the story grows, the character grows in the story. So when we think about the data stories, it is, again, similar approach. We do provide the setup or background information. We provide rising insights. There is a climax or the aha moment, which is really the key insight. And then there is solution and next steps. So how do we get there? The aha moment, what you want to communicate, the insight that you arrived at, that is the main point we want to get across. Once we have that, we do set up the story that provides background information to the users, to the audience. We provide rising insights, allow users to peel the layers of whatever is being presented to come to arrive at the insight. And finally, we provide the next steps, the solution. And throughout this journey, we use visualizations to enhance the experience, to communicate better, and so on. So in all of this journey, we always must focus on who is the hero of the story, right? Depending on what we want to communicate, who we want to focus on, the story may be different, right? So when it is a campaign for raising funds for poor children, those children are the heroes of those stories. In case of the dashboard, I would say that there are really a primary hero of the story, which is the constituents of California who are using the health plans. And then there is secondary hero of the story, which is Department of Managed Healthcare. Why? Because before that story is told effectively, how many of us really knew what DMHC did? I really didn't know that. So through the storytelling, we gained more insight for both of these characters. So going to the next step, which is the visualizations. We do want to present visualizations, but in a way that allows users to explore the insights themselves. If you chew it all and give it as the final piece of information, there is no exploration. We want to provide a controlled environment, just like in the dashboard. The data is presented, but the users can interact with it, select various time sequences or categories, etc., so that the user is engaged. They want to explore it themselves and they want to make decisions for themselves. So here are the 6 tips for visualizations, and whoever attended the previous session probably came across some of these. What is the data insight we want to communicate? Choosing the right visualizations to present it, calibrating the message, removing noise, etc. So let's look at this quickly. This particular visualization tells us that there is growth in revenue and growth in number of visits on a website. Is this useful? What insight is it communicating? It is telling us that there is growth in both dimensions. But what we want to focus on really is, there is growth, but revenue per visit is decreasing. So what is the insight you want to communicate? Focus on that. Then provide some comparative information so that it can be seen in context. Choosing right visualizations. We've heard again about the use of pie charts versus bar charts. Depending on what you want to communicate and get across, you may choose one or other visual. But in general, pie charts have what we call it as the content density. It has low content density, while bar charts help you with better comparisons. Calibrating your visuals. You could present the data in this particular fashion, or you could present it to indicate, again, what is that you want to communicate. Removing unnecessary noise. Focus on what is the point you're trying to get across, and highlighting what is important. And ultimately make it easy to consume. You could present this particular simple bar chart where there is these labels could be somewhere else, presented in the form of a legend. If those labels are presented right with that particular chart, it makes it easy to consume. Finally, make use of interactivity, right? When the data is presented with the interaction given to the user with interactivity, they can explore it themselves. The dashboards become, easy to consume, as well as give you something that you didn't think of. So to recap, data storytelling is really a structured approach for bringing together data-driven insights in a user-centric fashion and in an engaging way. So we transform the data which is cold, distant and impersonal to something which is more accessible, insightful, useful, and really makes a difference in people's lives. So with that, I'm going to stop and we'll open up for questions. Yes.
I think you mentioned a couple of times, but can you briefly just describe the differences between visualization versus storytelling, from your perspective?
Right. So visualization is a component of the entire storytelling. So visualization supports the story. So that's how we look at it. So it's among those three circles that you saw, it is one of the components. Yes.
So how long did it take you to go from the columnar spreadsheet type report to what you showed us?
Yes, that's a great question. So we originally planned on 6 months. It took us a little over 12 months. And a lot of that, again, was due to setting up the right business rules. One of the things I didn't mention is that we set up the dashboard to be dynamic, meaning that there's very little workload to continue the dashboard. We tried to make everything automated, so all the data pushes automatically from the existing databases where the data is housed into the dashboard itself.
So just to add to that, so like Rachel said, we initially worked on the dashboard and created the dashboard. Once it started presenting the data, we started recognizing the issues with the data. So it's like we had to go iteratively and fix it. And
Yes, exactly.
So, again, related to the same question, what tools and specific tools and technologies have you used to make it happen? Like specific tools, like.
Right. So the dashboard is built using Microsoft technologies. So SQL Server with all the three SSIS, SSAS, and SSRS. So reporting services, analysis services.
Any Power BI, things like that?
No Power BI.
So just SQL?
So SQL, yeah. This used reporting services with the, again,
Vision, yeah.
the RDL is the,
Okay.
is that resource description? Like, yeah. So it is SSRS with JavaScript for
I
the
see.
interactivity.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
When you're thinking about designing the story, the visuals, the whole message to the audience, could you say a little bit about what variables or how you think about it? We've talked about education, there's race, ethnicity, there's geography, there's even in the political environment, there are perceptions on how people value it. So maybe a little bit of how you
Right.
at least ask your clients about what
Yes.
is your audience and what things are most important to factor in.
Sure. So one thing I do want to talk about here is that from data to insight, it is pure facts. It is based on what the data is telling us. But from insight to communication to story, that's where the editorial aspect comes in picture, right? If you just pick up any newspaper and read a story, it is, you may say it is biased, but it need not be biased, but it has that editorial input, right? You're trying to get across a point of view. And how do you get that across that point of view? It is, based on what you want to tell. The same story on Fox News may be different than on CNN, right? So it is that aspect comes in picture. Does that
That's part of what I was getting at. And any other reflections you have, because it's not just a
Right.
political lens, but
correct, right? Yeah.
education.
So right, and so basically, when we understand who is the hero and who is the audience. Say, for example, the chart that I showed about the revenue and the visits both growing. Let's say that the audience is the digital experience manager or the marketing manager who wants to make certain decisions, right? So for that particular audience, it is important that they know what is the real state of today's situation, that the revenue per visit is decreasing. So it's not a good picture. But who is the hero of the story? It is the customers of that particular organization. They are the heroes. They are the ones we want to keep constant focus on. So once we distinguish who is the audience and who is the hero, we look at the audience in terms of how are they going to consume the information and how we keep focus on what matters for the organization. So
I think the key also is for you to know what the goal of your story is. I mean, that's all going to vary and change based on what your goals are. So for us, with the dashboard and being a state department, we weren't trying to take certain positions or, say this plan is good or this plan is bad. We are more just presenting the information in a most neutral and unbiased fashion, and people can draw their own conclusions from the data that's there.
yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the reach to the audiences that you were, with the healthcare site? Just talk a little bit about how you reached those audiences or the outcome, what sort of feedback you got from the audiences that you were trying to reach and meeting the goals that you set out.
Right. So we did follow the user-centric design approach, and early on we were involved and engaged with multiple stakeholder groups who use the data, working with Rachel and Roger, and had many interviews to gather what is that was important to them and what mattered to them. As we went ahead, again, there was engagement on an ongoing basis, getting the feedback, both internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. Anything you?
No, I think that sums it up.
Okay. Yes.
So how do you minimize the risk of exposing PII, PHI when you are implementing an open data portal? If, let's say, sometimes you do the drill downs and your cell size is too small. If you have 10 patients in a zip code, you can overlay that data with another data set. Mm-hmm. So how do you protect consumer information in an open data portal?
Right.
Do you want me to talk about the dashboard?
Yeah, go ahead.
So for the dashboard, the data that we present, we already ensure through our data quality management that the public data doesn't have any PHI information. But one of the ways we ensure the security of the data is all of the data is housed in a staging database for the dashboard. It's not pushed directly from our internal systems, so that because our internal systems have additional data that's not on the dashboard that could have the PHI. So that's one of the ways that we ensure it can't inadvertently end up on the dashboard, or somebody looking for that information wouldn't be able to get there.
Yeah, just to add to that, basically data governance takes care of the data curation aspects or data quality management aspects. So, you can implement certain things in an automated fashion, but for certain things you do need that, verification or defining those curation algorithms. So that has to be taken care of early on. Any other questions? Yes.
Where can I find the dashboard online?
That's a great question that was planted in the audience. So for anyone interested in going out and exploring the dashboard, you can get there on the DMHC homepage. The URL is www.healthhelp.ca.gov.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.